Patricia.
Thank you, Rick. Well, hi, my name's Tricia. I am an H-2A program assistant with wafla. These guys are the two head honchos, Dan and Rick, but I'm just the person who, if you end up calling wafla, you'll probably end up talking to me or one of my 4 coworkers. There are 5 H-2A program assistants with wafla, and one of them is a program manager, so not really an assistant, but anyways, I'm going to be chatting a little bit about foreign labor certification, the H-2A and H-2B Visa Program. How many people are familiar with the H-2A Visa Program, heard a little bit about it, or it's completely, wow, it's completely blank. This is great. This is new. So what is the H-2A Visa Program? Well, I don't like reading slides verbatim, but this one is definitely worth doing that for. It allows employers to hire foreign workers on a temporary basis to perform agricultural jobs when there are not sufficient U.S. workers who are able, willing, and qualified, those are underlined for a reason, to perform the job, as long as it does not adversely affect the wages and working conditions of workers in the U.S. similarly employed. So good to go, right? Not a problem. Basically, the H-2A program, like we said, we were talking a lot about labor shortage. People aren't wanting to do these agriculture jobs anymore. So where do you get your workers? Well, H-2A program allowed you to bring in foreign labor. WAFLA specifically works with Mexico, though we have had a couple contracts from Jamaica, to bring in foreign workers who are able, willing, and qualified to perform the job if there's not a sufficient amount of domestic workers to perform these jobs. So we'll move on to the next slide here. So once again, how does it work? Well, as the employer, you have to provide housing for these foreign workers. If we're bringing in legal workers from Mexico, they probably don't have their own housing here. So one of the regulations for the H-2A program is that you have to provide housing. You have to have a period of need, so a contract date. It has to be a seasonal job. It has to be temporary. So you have to have, whether it be June to November, you have to have a specific date of need when there's a shortage of workers. So you have to recruit and hire available domestic workers. This is all about protecting domestic workers. We want to give domestic workers the jobs if they're here, but the problem is there's the labor shortage. So to do the H-2A program, you have to prove that you've done everything you can to hire these domestic workers. And, if you prove they're just not coming, we would love to hire them, but they're not coming and they're not willing, or they're not willing, able, and qualified, stop buzzing, then that's when you can start hiring those foreign labor. Yeah, and if there is a shortage, you're given permission to bring in foreign workers, and that's all done through putting in our government applications and going through that process. So who is using H-2A? Well, right now, the biggest percentage is tree fruit growers. We get a lot of cherries, apples, pears. Those are some of our strongest ones, apples specifically, especially for Washington, but vegetable is the second overall. We're getting a lot of row crops, and hops are up and coming now as well. However, we are getting more and more contracts in, thank you. We're getting more contracts with berries and small fruit. We have a couple of contracts with Skagit County and Whatcom County. And basically it's a growing industry. Everyone's becoming a little more interested in it because, as was said, we're all getting a shortage of labor. So that's going to affect all, the entire agricultural industry, no matter what crop you're growing. There's a shortage. And so everyone is becoming more and more interested in this H-2A program. So with the program, you have to know the regulation. That is so, so, so important. It's the key. You have to follow the law. We want to make sure everything's clean and kosher. So with that, these are basically the key assurances and obligations that have to be offered within the H-2A program. Non-discriminatory hiring. You don't treat foreign workers any differently than you do domestic, and you don't treat domestic any differently than you do the foreign labor. If they're willing, able, and qualified, you hire them. You have to have recruitment requirements. Once again, you have to prove that you've done your best to recruit domestic workers, and you have to provide documentation to that to the government, just to show that there is a shortage. You're not just hiring foreign labor because it's cheaper or something like that. 50% rule, you have to hire any domestic worker who comes and is willing, able, and qualified. Up to 50% of the contract date, you have to hire them. So you get a person from Whatcom County and they're wanting a job in Prosser, Washington, and they're domestic, and if they're willing, able, and qualified, you have to hire them for up to 50% of the contract. So if your data need is June 1st to November 23rd, that 50% mark, you have to hire domestic workers until then. Obviously, you have to have compliance with the laws, and it has to be a full-time job opportunity, at least 35 hours a week. Yeah, you guys can basically read through the rest of it. I don't want to spend too long on a list, but and we can come back to that if there's any questions. But the last point is pretty important. You do have to have a notice of workers' rights. Every worker has their rights, and it's actually a really big selling point for foreign labor. They want to come to the US to work because they have rights here. The same labor rights that apply to domestic workers apply to foreign workers, hence the non-discriminatory part. So we'll move on from there. So the first step is labor certification. You have to submit an application to SWA, the state work source, and basically show that you have a labor shortage. You have to get certified. They'll help recruit and advertise. People can go to their local work source and say what jobs are out there, and they'll say, okay, well, here's one. And you recruit and advertise, and you report everyone you've recruited and everything like that. You've done everything you can to recruit domestic workers. Once we get all that and we're approved with SWA, we'll go ahead and file with the Department of Labor, showing once again that there is a labor shortage and that you are certified for the H-2A program, you are certified for temporary seasonal work, and then you'll get that A-OK from the Fed, and then we'll go ahead and start doing the H-2A program. So referral of U.S. workers. So the state, or SWA, will refer applicants who have been informed of the terms and conditions of employment and have indicated that they are willing, able, and qualified. So when you advertise for the job, you have to advertise the wage and the hours. You have to guarantee that they're going to be offered, not offered, I apologize, 75% of the hours listed in the contract. You have to guarantee that they're going to get at least 75% of the hours offered. These are all listed in the job description, and so they know what they're getting into before they come. But once again, they have to be able, willing, and qualified. Those are the three key kind of hit 'em home points, because those are kind of the points that help you treat domestic and foreign the same if everyone's willing, able, and qualified. So the advantages of the H-2A program are quite extensive. This list doesn't do it justice, but it provides a stable workforce. You're supplying that shortage. You're bringing up foreign workers legally with their H-2A visas, and they're committed to you. They're working for you for your entire season. They're here for the contract dates. Legal workers, you get, it's always good to be legal. That's what we want to do. And so this program guarantees that you're hiring legal workers, keeps you out of trouble, keeps them out of trouble. But the old traditions of hiring are definitely going away rapidly. Regulations are becoming more and more strict, which is good. We want legal workers, and this program guarantees that. For berry growers, we know that your seasons are very, tree fruit is a little bit longer and things like that. For berry growers, it's a very specific, you have a very specific dates, you have very specific timelines that you have to work with. So, do I need workers for this amount of time? How many workers should I have for, 2 weeks or something like that? There is definitely an affordable way to do all that. And I'm going to let Dan kind of hit on that point a little bit between the shared and sequential contracts. Do you want to come up now? All right, so I'll let Dan kind of take that away, and then I'll come back to you guys in a bit.
Great. Thanks a lot, Patricia. I appreciate it. Patricia's one of our bright new young shiny faces. Wanted to bring her up here and get her out of the office and talk to you grizzled old guys. So give her a break, ask her a couple questions, ask for a business card. She'd love to talk to you. But she'd love to talk to you more. So just to underscore what Patricia is saying, that we have a large number of smaller growers that are enrolling in the H-2A program, and our challenge is to make it affordable for them. For example, the largest user of the H-2A program, does anyone know what county uses the most H-2A workers in Washington State? Okanagan County by a long way. So we're bringing somewhere between 9,000 and 10,000 workers, and a quarter to a third of them are going up to Okanagan County. Pateras, Brewster, Omak, places like that. We're a very small farm. Our smallest H-2A contract is 2 workers. Our largest is 1,500. So we like to tell people if you have between 2 and 1,500 workers, we can probably help you out. What Patricia was saying is to talk about the problems that you face when you have a short growing season. We do have a berry grower that that is an integrated berry grower that has lots of different berries, and they have a longer contract. And that's, if you have a longer contract, you can do everything yourself. Okay, you can bring people up here. Generally, we say if you're going to have people here for more than 5 months, the program pays for itself because you have a significant tax advantage. I almost think I can do better without this thing. No? Okay. It just have to get closer to it, or further away. Okay, thanks. All right. So if you're going to need workers for 5 months or more, you can probably do the program by yourself. Okay. If you're going to need people in sporadic or less than 5 months, the costs of getting the people up here are going to be such that you're going to want to look at a cost-saving measure. So we have 2 cost-saving measures that are being used very, very extensively. The first one is a sharing of workers. Okay, so what happens is, I mentioned that in Okanagan County, a lot of small growers are using the program. What'll happen is I'll need 3 workers, Rick will need 4, and Patricia will need 5 workers. Okay, so between the 3 of us, we'll need 12 workers. Okay, and we have 3 different independent farms. We'll list them all on the contract. By the way, I think it sounded a little bit tougher than it was on these contracts. The way our program works is that we do all the paperwork and we deliver the worker to you. Okay, so you're responsible to once the worker gets to your farm, just to treat that worker as like you would any other worker. So when people contact us to say, Wafla, we need you to do the paperwork. We need you to put the ads in the paper. We need you to work with the state. We need you to work with the feds. We need you to work with the folks at the border and the bus company. So that's what we do. Okay. So you as a member, you're responsible to say how many workers you need, and then to treat that worker as any other employee. The thing that is the real advantage of the program is that you're not going to pay any payroll taxes on the H-2A worker. So you're going to get a $1.50 to $2 an hour advantage on that foreign worker. And that's why over a season that's 1,000 hours, you're going to have that $1,500 plus advantage. So, but if you have a really small compressed season, a 400 or 500 hour season, that's when you're going to talk about some of these other methods like sharing. So what happens is we've got the 3 farms. We've got the 12 employees that we need. I need 3, Rick needs 4, and Patricia needs 5. We list all 3 farms on the contract. Let's say we need the workers from July 1 through October 1. Okay, so the workers get up here on July 1. 3 come to me, 4 go to Rick, and 5 go to Patricia. Now the first advantage is that I don't have any housing. Patricia doesn't have any housing, and Rick has housing for 15 guys. So all the workers stay at Rick's housing. Okay, and so I separately pay Rick $7 per night per bed for the 3 guys that I have. Okay, so now you don't even have to build housing because someone else can provide housing. We have growers that use hotel rooms. We have growers that use someone else's housing. We have growers that use public housing. Okay, and so that's the first advantage. The second advantage is the contract itself costs about $4,500 to do. Well, it costs $4,500 if there's 1 member on the contract or 1 worker on the contract, and it costs $4,500 if there's 3 employers on the contract. So now I just saved $3,000 because instead of $4,500, we're paying $1,500 a piece. And then the last thing is, suppose 1 week I need 10 guys. Well, I only paid for 3 to come up here, right? I only paid the cost, the inbound cost for 3 of them, and Rick and Patricia paid for their 4 and 5. I can use those 10 guys, and I just pay those 10 guys when they're on my property. So we see that sharing among growers. That you have basically this pool of 12 employees that can work for the 3 different farmers. Does that make any sense to people? I mean, that's why we have very few people that ever leave the program once they get in. When we started the program back in 2007, and we had fewer than 2,000 workers that we were bringing up, and we had about a dozen farms. Last year, we filed 111 applications, for a little bit over 9,000 workers. So, this program or some other program like it is what's going to be used in labor-intensive agriculture, because as was mentioned, the wages are going to go up. A rising minimum wage does absolutely nothing for the labor shortage. I've been studying the labor shortage for 15 years. I've seen papers and studies on both sides, from the left and the right, and really raising the minimum wage does absolutely nothing other than it makes a couple of winners on the low end people and a couple of losers, or people that lose their job, right? So you have 10 people working at minimum wage. Everyone gets a wage increase. 9 of them get a wage increase, and 1 person gets fired. And that's really what happens when you raise the minimum wage. There's really no net effect anywhere on the economy or on your ability to attract workers. Okay. As a matter of fact, if you get paid $12 an hour to do a job that isn't hard work, like working at as a guard at a bank or McDonald's or something like that, why would you work for $12 an hour on the field where it is hard work? So basically, the only thing it'll do is it'll exacerbate the labor shortage. So this is the first method to save money when you have a short growing season. Again, if you grow lots of berries, you have different berries that are coming off at different times, you probably wouldn't need this. The other very, very powerful cost-saving mechanism that we use is called sequential contract. It's when we bring workers up here, and instead of having the same common date of need, I need people earlier in the season, Rick needs people later in the season, and Tricia needs people last. Okay, so in this situation, I'm an asparagus grower. Rick's a blueberry guy that is middle of the season that needs stuff off, and Tricia has apples only up in Okanagan, and they don't start until after the beginning of September, so about September 15th. So I bring the people up here for asparagus in March or April. They work for me, then they end my contract, okay, and then they go work for Rick, and they work for Rick from July 1st until September 1st, okay, or September 15th, and then they go work for Patricia. So what does that do? Well, it costs about $1,200 to get a guy up and back. You have to pay all the border crossing fees, the agent fees, the government fees. There's several different agency fees, and we divide that 3 ways. So I pay to get the guys up here. Rick, we each pay a third of the cost of getting the people up here. Like what we like to say is, it's easier to transport a person from Prosser to Linden than it is from Michoacan. Okay, so we're really moving people around the state, and we have contracts now in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. Actually, we have some in Nevada and California as well, but we really focus on Washington, Oregon, and Idaho because it gives us the ability to get up there if the grower needs a person from wafla. Our system is a turnkey program where we visit the workers when they get here. We visit with your top management teams, and we visit with your crew leaders to make sure that they understand how it works. So that's kind of it. I like to talk about the disadvantage of the H-2A program. It's expensive. There's a lot of paperwork. You'll be targeted by regulators, and therefore you have to have good HR practices. That's it in a nutshell. Okay. We can talk specifically about the expenses and how we get around that. The paperwork is the biggest thing that we have intended to take off your back, but you have got to have good HR practices. And really, whether you're in the H-2A program or not, you have to have good HR practices, and we're gonna talk a little bit about that in the next session. So with that, we'd like to open it up for questions. Sir.
I have one question. Can a labor contractor file for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Labor contractors can use the H-2A program, and a labor contractor can use the H-2A program. and we would actually work with some labor contractors that, that we are basically the agent for that labor contractor. The other thing is, the labor contractors, and this is a point I should have mentioned, like anyone else, the reason for using the contract is you need to have the people there when you want them, okay? And you need to have the same people year in and year out. And that's really what this program does. So if you say, I need people on my farm on July 1st, and I want the same guy here this year that was here last year, this is the program, that you would use. So yeah, labor contractors can use the program.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to go into the next. He wants to leave.
I was curious if you have a farmer who maybe doesn't have a group of farmers that he can collect with to create that. Do you guys help find housing, or do we need to come up with that on our own and then bring that to you?
So the question is, if you don't have housing, will we help you with housing? Housing is something that you have to do, but more and more we are getting involved in helping with housing. As a matter of fact, Rick has a project right now that he's working on where he's going to potentially lease 200 beds over in Yakima. So we're always looking for housing opportunities where we can, lease a motel or did I do something? Okay. We lease a motel or something like that. And, and there are public housing, facilities available as well. They're not as readily available in Skagit and Whatcom as they are in Eastern Washington. I will say that. But housing is something, if you don't have the housing, we would like to talk to you about it and see if we can put our heads together. We have several housing providers that have contacted us with very, very innovative solutions of housing that just they drop it off for the season and then take it away and things like that. So we have several of those kinds of opportunities. And was there another part to your question, or was it just housing? Yeah. So housing's an issue. Sir?
That domestic labor shortage, do you have to show that each year?
Well, yeah, but I mean, we filed 111 applications last year, and 111 times we showed it. You have to show it every time. It's really the only discretionary part of the application is what you get from the Department of Labor. It's called a labor certification. So basically what happens is, just to summarize Patricia's slide, is we file this application 60 days or so before your boots on the ground date, okay? So let's say your boots on the ground date is June 1st, okay? So on April 1st or thereabouts, we're going to file this application. And during the month of April, we're just going to be doing stuff, okay? We're going to be putting ads and papers in, in several states, okay? We're going to be meeting with the state workforce agents, which when we first started doing this, it was a tough meeting. Now it's, we just say, hey, we're calling in to do our required meeting. This is Patricia from wafla. We're calling in to do our required meeting. They say check the box, right? So that what happens is, so during the month of April, you're gonna be kind of beating the bushes. The one thing that you have to do as an employer is you have to send a postcard out to any worker that worked for that season last year. Okay, so if this is a contract for picking blueberries from July 1st to September 15th. Anyone who was there from July 1st to September 15th, you send them a little postcard that says, we are hiring for seasonal work for July 1st through September 15th. Please call us if you're interested. You get zero response from those postcards, okay? I mean, our members send out hundreds of thousands probably, each year, and we get no response from the postcard. But that's one of the things we do. So for 30 days, you basically do what's called this recruiting type of thing. So you need people June 1st. In the month of April, you're doing this. And on May 1st, we send a report over to the Department of Labor. It's a boilerplate report. And we say, Rick's farm was applying for 10, foreign workers. We don't see any domestic workers that are gonna help us. Would you give us a labor cert? And it comes back. So we filed 111 applications last year. We got 111 labor certs, and so the Department of Labor knows that there's an extensive an extreme labor shortage. So good question though. Sir. Yeah.
Specifically on Skagit County.
Right, absolutely.
Can you touch on that?
I absolutely can. So what happened is, we had a large grower in Skagit County that used the H-2A program, and and it set off a labor type of situation that that might have been brewing for some time there, and there is opposition to the H-2A program. The opposition, we have actually opposition on the far left and the far right. Okay, and the far left, what they're saying is you're displacing domestic workers. What we've done in response to that is we've reached out a lot to several of the agencies like the Washington Hispanic Commission, Mexican Consulate, and other folks who are very, very strong supporters of the legal worker program. Because, and we've just explained to people that this is not we want to hire a domestic worker. Every domestic worker that we can hire is a foreign worker that we don't have to bring. The problem is that, number one, there's not enough domestic workers. Number two, many of the domestic workers are not legally authorized to be here. And number three, many of the domestic workers don't want to work for the entire season, the length of the contract. And so those are the three things that we explain to people. So we have 2 H-2A contracts in Berries going right now in this area, and no problems whatsoever. Actually, the labor activists showed up, and then we called the Mexican Consulate and the Washington Hispanic Commission and ESD, and they said, there's no problem here. And so that's the way we handle it. So we've gotten a lot more proactive. Good question. I really don't know why people would have a problem having other people have the dignity of being discussed here. And that's what we kind of stress to the left-wing activists. We tour them around the state and say, well, this is a program that workers absolutely love, because they love the fact that they can come here and earn a lot of money and have the dignity of legal presence. We have H-2A guys that their mom dies, or they're death back home in the family or something like that. They take a plane home for the weekend, come back. Guys that are here on nothing, you can't do that. Okay, we're really not doing people a favor by keeping them in this kind of quasi system that we have, and that's close to political as I get. But really, we have a system that's way out of control. That it's not any way to run a railroad. Really, the way we're doing business here in agriculture and in the entire nation for seasonal type of jobs. But really good question. We're getting a lot more aggressive in our stance to those kinds of people that are just saying that that we're displacing domestic workers. Okay. Another thing that we hear all the time is that, see, when you have at your period of need, so you're humming along and you say my period of need is July 1st to September 15th, let's say. Okay. So on July 1st, you're going to have to raise your wages for field workers to $12.42 an hour. And so what will happen is the domestic workers will come up to you and say, oh, wasn't I worth $12.42 an hour on June 30th? Wasn't I worth $12.42 an hour? Because they're working for you already. Why are you just raising my wages now? And we say, no, and so we have to answer that. We have to say, no, the reason we're raising the minimum wage here is because, you're getting a pay raise that you wouldn't have gotten but for this federal program. And so, because there's a shortage of workers at this time on our farm, we're raising wages. And that's something that the federal government requires us to do. It's one of the ways that we prove that there's a labor shortage, right? Basically, we've raised the wages 30% from the prevailing local wage, which is the state minimum wage. Okay. So we all know that you have to pay more than more than $9.40 whatever it is cents an hour to get a decent worker anyway. So it's not a big deal. But really, really good question. We're just seeing that for the first time on the other side. So the other, it used to be that Democrats were our best friends in legalizing the people that are here, which we support, right, as an association, but they struggled to help us on the legal worker program, okay? And Republicans were our best friends on making the changes that we needed to make it easier to use the legal worker program, but struggled to support giving status adjustment to the people that are here. Now there's a far fringe of the right-wing side that says, we don't want any legal worker programs. We want you just to hire Americans. And we say, yeah, that's great. You can put down your latte now and come out and try and pick some blueberries. And so that's kind of what we're hearing for the first time. I think really they're just, they're just don't want to see a comprehensive immigration reform bill because the federal government has bungled so many comprehensive bills, and they would rather have small piecemeal type of fixes to the immigration system, which is just fine by us. But the first thing that's going to happen, any piecemeal system, is they're going to do E-Verify. E-Verify is just an absolute no-brainer. I mean, it's like what we say is, the reason we have undocumented or illegal immigration is because it's too hard to use the legal worker program. That's really how we got in this system, this problem that we're in. They passed the law in '86. It was the last immigration law, and they adopted this legal worker program, but it was too hard to use. So if it's too hard to do it legally, people are gonna resort to the alternative. Okay, whether it's marijuana or workers, if it's too hard for people to do it legally and they want to do it, they're gonna take the alternative. And that's what happened. Is it was too hard for people to do it legally. It's tough to do this program. Okay, we work really hard on the program. When we started, when we scratched our head and started doing this back in right after 9/11, we said, wow. The reason why people on the West Coast don't use this program is because it's a tough program to use. People on the East Coast were using it for a long time. We kind of pioneered it, and we're the second biggest in the country. And we kind of pioneered it on the West Coast.